Hey, everybody, and welcome. I'm Haley Mitchell Haugen. I'm the founding editor of Sheila-Na-Gig Online and Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. And tonight we've come together to celebrate the publication of Ohio poet Kate Fox's full collection, The Company Misery Loves. And joining us tonight, thank you. We're holding it up there. Perfect. Joining us tonight is Jessica Barksdale and Ellen Austin Lee, both contributors to Sheila-Na-Gig Volume 8.4, our summer 2024 edition. So welcome, everybody. I'm coming to you from Long Beach, California, and this is kind of cool because it's the place that Sheila-Na-Gig began in 1990 when I first started publishing the print version of the journal as an undergrad at Cal State Long Beach. So it's pretty cool to kind of be back on my old stomping ground and still doing some Sheila-Na-Gig things. So that's pretty exciting. All right, so I'm going to move in and introduce the fabulous Kate Fox. Kate,
Fantastic, Kate.
yeah. So Kate's work has appeared in Great River Review, the New Ohio Review, Green Mountains Review, Kenyon Review, Valparaiso Review, Pleiades, and West Branch. She's authored 2 poetry chapbooks, The Lazarus Method, which I hope we'll hear some Lazarus poems tonight, maybe, chosen for the Wick Poetry Series and published by Kent State University Press, and Walking Off the Map, published by Seven Kitchens Press in Cincinnati. She was an Ohio Arts Council Individual Artist Grant recipient, and her poem, The Lost Baby Poem, earned 2nd place in Cutthroat's Joy Harjo Poetry Word competition. She lives in Athens, Ohio, with poet and scholar Bob DeMott, and their 2 English setters, mild-mannered Katie and ill-mannered Patch. I'm pretty sure that Kate will be well-mannered here tonight. So happy to have you and to have the honor to publish The Company Misery Loves. So.
Thank you so much. And I want to also return the favor. I have a few thank yous, so please don't orchestra me off the stage. But I did want to thank you for finally, at the age of 68, publishing my first poetry book. So that means that you can look for the second one probably around 2064, somewhere in there. So that'll be the next one. And I also wanted to thank all of the people that are in the acknowledgments, the editors and the magazines and literary journals that supported these poems when they didn't have a home, so to speak. And finally, I think I would just like to thank the 4 people that I dedicated the book to, which are Bob DeMott, Randy Mitchell, and Donna Spencer, and June Berkeley. So, shall we get started? I'll say a little bit about these, but I want to stay within my time frame. So just, I guess, turn me off if I get too long, okay? And I thought, oh, and we are in Montana, so Yellowstone. And I am saving you from the "Don't Pet the Fluffy Cow" t-shirt. So I didn't get that one. But I thought what I'd do is start out reading a poem about fishing, since that's what we've been doing here for the last week and a half or 2. It's called Lifelines, and it's for Bob. Yours runs deep through the palm like a peach cleft, while mine chains itself, widow's thinning braid, down through side channels, branches, wishbones, to the wrist's blue vein delta, never quite visible, never easy to read. Yet these hands come together, yours grip thick, deliberate, while mine land and flap like startled sparrows, not knuckled, yet deft enough to grasp the moment. Hold on like a tick to the flesh. Like that day on the Madison when you stomped the anchor release and we watched the rope slither between your wading boots, disappear out the back of the drift boat. Stunned, ham-fisted, thunderstruck, you yelled, "Well, goddamn, there goes the anchor," with such emphasis that it sounded like a punchline, while my hands flew up in that dark, undulating munch canvas of a gesture, as we sat petrified on the swivel seats, as the water began to carry us toward gravel bars, strainers, riffles, rocks, and sweeper trees that gave way to the hunkering piers of Lyons Bridge. That's when you shipped the oars with one lunge, vaulted starboard into the swift waters, while my fingers taloned themselves to the edge of the shallow boat, sweeping along the current, leaving you hip deep, peering into water, then slogging through river grass like Ophelia's undone hair. That's where you found the braided rope streaming around your ankles like some clever snake looped through the anchor. You kicked it up, fashioned a dripping lasso, tossed it across boiling rocks to the boat where I caught it. Metaphor for what we do every day. This thin line, this holding on. I probably should have added to that one that Bob funded a class for me to go to drift boat school. And I think I was so naive that I didn't realize that he was the one that was going to fish while I was, rowing the drift boat. So I guess, thankfully, I failed that. So, okay. This one's West Union Cemetery for Brandy. Everybody goes there, she says. It's the safest place to learn. So we drive there after dinner, the sun coming down through the trees, the whole world turning like a dog before the hearth. At first, I try and tell her how to start, how to synchronize the gas with the clutch, but the car lurches anyway, and we're off, crawling among banks of the dead until at last we pick up speed, glide like a wagon past rows of weathered mailboxes. McAllister, Reed, Franklin, Giroux. I want to read them off to her as we make the turn, head for the long stretch of second gear. But I can tell she's more concerned with shifting than with the delicate engravings in granite. Yet there is so much left to tell her, I think, about momentum, about the grip of the tires on slick pavement, about the hazards of driving at night, about freeways, crosswalks, detours, dead ends, about yielding. The cemetery closes at 8. There's time, she says, for one more round before dark. So we turn down the steep hill between Richfield and Pike, marble shoulders shrugging off the grinding gears as far back as Schaefer and Lutz, as far ahead as our names can travel. It's funny how things come around full, because Brandy sent me something the other day from a comedian named Jeff, I think his name is John Heffron, and he talks about probably people your age. He called them the early old, and they're in their 40s and 50s. And his theory was that they should be given something like we had in junior high and high school, where we had an orientation to being old. And so he kind of talks about the classes you would have if you had that. And one of them I thought was hilarious, which is how to take the car keys from your parents. So that may be the next thing that a driving poem is about. This is an early poem, and it was inspired by Nikos Kazantzakis. Donna would be able to say this because she's gone to Greece, but his The Last Temptation of Christ, where it was just so very interesting that his Christ was such a loser, and it was just a great thing to learn. So this is called the Lazarus Method. It's quite an embarrassment, his lanky frame dragging around behind you like an ill-seamed quilt. His skin, the clinging remnants of a parade that trails him all the way from the sepulcher, as if someday he might want to follow it back. Fat chance. For 3 days, he's been dogging you like some method worse than death, saying, can't you at least do something about the smell? After all, I didn't ask for this. And you want to say you didn't ask for this either, that you were surprised it worked at all, What with the women howling in your ear and the lepers outside clamoring to be cleansed. You want to say it was all a mistake, this display at his expense, that you're sorry and you want to make it up to him. But you can tell his price is far beyond atonement, as his flesh-ragged fingers pick at your robes. You'll pay for this, he says, and I'll be there to see it. And suddenly you realize why you've come to love this man, this failing cadaver, who's promised to follow you all the way to Golgotha if he has to. One of the chapbooks, thank you, Ron Mooring, deals with persona poems, which I considered The Lazarus Method to be a persona poem too. But this one is from a series that I did about George Mallory and Andrew Irvine and the first Everest expedition, because it is now, this past month in June, its 100th anniversary of their disappearance on the top of Mount Everest. And if you're like me, when I first started this, I got Edmund Hillary and George Mallory confused a lot. And one of them, of course, went up in 1924. The other one went up in 1952, I think, or 53. George Mallory is the one that said, when they say, why do you? He said, because it's there. So this is a woman, her name is Kathleen Scott Young, and she was married to Robert Falcon Scott, who was also an explorer and didn't come back from the polar cap. So, but Kathleen Scott Young, who's not very well known, was also a great sculptor and made honorary awards, I guess, to people. So she's the one who made the award for Robert Perry's wife. They're all just a little bunch of explorers there. And this is from my friend Andy Politz. So he helped to find George Mallory's body in 1999. He climbed Everest 7 times and he reached the summit twice, once in 1991 when he was 32 and 2021 when he was 62. And he said in 30 years, he may try it again too. So he may be up on Everest while my book comes out. So Kathleen Scott Young's tribute to George Mallory for Andy Politz. This is going to be more like war than mountaineering. I don't expect to come back. George Mallory to Jeffrey Keenyas after his visit with Robert Falcon Scott's widow, Kathleen, in 1924. This is how I would have sculpted you, face down in a great house of granite, dimpled skin bleached to Carrara white by spindrift scouring the north face, gloved fingers anchored in talus that scatters like pine chips into the wrong buck abyss, stick-thin foot resting atop your skewered boot, as if you believed you might survive. Find purchase in the frozen debris to reclaim your beloved Sandy on the ledge above, and then, in the embrace of a fine Burberry weave, follow Odell's disembodied voice down the North Ridge to Camp 6 and on to base camp, family, commendation, and fame. Instead, the mountain preserved you as no monument of mine ever could. Everest holding fast to its own, quo in loco quem posuit, which means in the place where he has set, which is from a passage in the Bible that they read at their memorial in 1924. This is one that Haley mentioned, and I am just delighted to read it right now when things about women's lives are being decided all around, and it doesn't seem like many of them think that we women have anything legitimate to say about it. So I just wanted to read this poem because one of the things I did find out in doing the research for this poem is that more women die of childbirth than almost anything else. And it's not something they ever tell you. And of course they don't want to scare you or whatever. But, and then on top of that, of course, the person who loses the child is the mom. So they should have a say, I think. The Lost Child poem. There is no word for a parent who loses a child. That's how awful the loss is. J. Newgeboren, An Orphan's Tale. Since that day, I have carried your weight with me. Since the gurney and the curtain with the ball-bearing casters. Since the countdown on the lunar module screen that was supposed to stay at one number. Icelandic mountains that were supposed to repeat, not hiccup or stutter or simply flatten out like a roadmap. Not this scenario, the one with electrodes, cannula, orbital sander paddles smeared with conductive jelly, ready to jump you into a place and time, this place and time, with me as your only advocate. How wrong is this, baby girl? Barely a guest at your own party, barely there at all, then buried deep in apologies. I carry your weight with me the way mothers are born with all the eggs they will ever produce, as far back as DNA's Mobius braid can be traced. For as long as the blood cord has tied mother to child, so one can flow into the next and the next and the next. Every life we have ever lost, still with us in the flesh. How am I doing on time? I take it that's good. Okay. This next poem is for June Berkeley, and she is a writer as well, and she wrote about a lot of her family in West Virginia in her stories. But we have always had this friendly argument about whether to believe that there's an afterlife or not. But and at one time she got so frustrated, I think she told me, she said, I can't imagine with someone of your intellect believing something like that. So thanks, June. So this is called The Company Misery Loves for June Berkeley. Say you came back, as the dead are rumored to do. What snow would dust the doorstep of your leaving? What sunrise would welcome you back? What moon would cast its watery gaze across the river like a lantern floating lit in the black water? You who sat and listened to the lives of hired hands who worked your father's fields, poor in every sense of the word, and the Cantwells, aptly named, whose asbestos-clad shack up the hollow from your farm defied the creosote fate of a chimney fire, only to succumb to a deluge that swept the house down the mountain and buried the family under mud, the thickness and color of cow manure. Even the youngest, who hung on his mother's skirts like a rag torn from the larger, scratchy fabric of his father. All at the mercy of weather and neglect, expected to give and take, but mostly give, and then some. No wonder you believe that everything should end when you do, emptied of all the calendar days stacked like shipping crates, emptied of clocks that wring their hands over the same backward countdown every day. Somewhere in this void may be the kind of afterlife you could live with or be willing to die for, where you are loved beyond all reason without having to earn it, without having to pay. And I guess since it's across the page from that one, this is its companion poem. And this is a poem called That Evening Sun that I wrote for my dad. But I was just so excited that Elizabeth Bishop would know St. Louis blues and talk about it as the last line being just the hardest line. So I believe that's the only thing that Elizabeth Bishop and my dad ever had in common, but it's there. So That Evening Sun. The best line of iambic pentameter is not in classical poetry, but in W.C. Handy's St. Louis Blues. Elizabeth Bishop. Let me end this song on a not so minor note. Rest my head on this Gibson L1, sing goodbye to every lyric I have ever learned. The one about the boat that can carry two and the lonesome picker. The one about how Louise rode home on the mail train and how walking is most too slow. And of course, the one about riding down the canyon that even after 40 years recalls my father on a Saturday night, wrapping the fingers of his left hand with adhesive tape, swaying and slapping an upright bass in some small town dance hall while my mother waltzes across a floor strewn with cornmeal, and my brother and I fall asleep among coats piled high on folding chairs against the wall. He once told me music was the one thing he could rely on, married as he was in 1929. His first child, a girl born and buried a year later. A life of lung trouble that finally sent him out west to either die or get well. At 30, I took him at his word, picked up the guitar he gave me, the one around whose neck he wrapped my fingers, and taught me songs that survive on breath alone. How the water is wide, how I won't be worried long, how I hate to see that evening sun go down. We have a little more time? Oh, okay. This one's called No More. It's I always had this secret crush on Ray Charles, so there it is, out in the open now. And of course, he has been called the genius, and I think he really was. But this was the poem that I got out of that, so it's called No More. There's nothing written in the Bible that says, if you believe in me, you ain't going to have no troubles. Ray Charles. A thin-wristed woman, I might have made the cut, and you surely fit my MO. Dark-skinned, brilliant, difficult, and addicted, with a voice unearthed from some ancient burial ground of grief. The suit, the sunglasses, the escort, all conferring respect on such an unlikely prospect. Clean-shaven, quiet, well-mannered, assured, though that last might have been the heroine, you were my perfect bad boy. When told to hit the road, you just smiled, offered excuses, empty his pockets, made them sing it again, then moaned, "Oh, baby," when you failed to win them over. Nobody could whisper baby like you. Raw sex and affection, romance, hunger, religion, all cooked down into those sad old refrains that grace can be had for a song, that even bad love can save you. You'll give me that, right? When it's time to stop.
I think one more, Kate. One more will do
Good
it.
deal. Okay.
We'll be right on track. Okay.
I'll read the summer song of longing. So this is called A Summer Wind, a Cotton Dress. It's also, that's a song title by a musician named Richard Shandell, who is just a wonderful singer and wonderful songwriter. And the two lines that I take from that song are a glance held long and a stolen kiss. That is how I remember you best. Little fires light themselves in the hearth, like tongues of flame that reclaim the Holy Spirit, like pitchforks in this clapboard house where mayflies swarm and crackle against the porch light. On down, a gas station, a 5 and dime, and your house, which I can see from the kitchen, where clothes on the line billow and collapse, billow and collapse. For now, this small town holds everything I will ever know and have to leave behind. Bidden and forbidden glances, voices from the second floor landing that warn, go no further, night will fall and you will fall with it, which is what I want, for the universe to take up where I leave off. This longing so deep, it can hold entire planets in its bottomless pocket, yet shrink to the size of a finger at the hollow of your neck, heart drawing blood from the branchwork of your breathing. Thank you. And I came through?
You came through. We did it.
Yay. Okay.
Thanks so much, Kate. Wonderful to hear these poems. You've missed like the smiles and the reactions and the clapping. Like every time you look down, like people were clapping, and you missed all that. So, but clearly everyone has been enjoying the reading. So,
I'm so glad you're recording it because then I can just go back and see that. So that's great.
that helps. So we have been listening to and enjoying Kate Fox, the author of The Company Misery Loves from Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. And now we're going to welcome two more readers for our event tonight from Sheila-Na-Gig's summer issue. We're going to kick it off with Jessica Barksdale. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, and wonderful reading, Kate. Thank you so much. I really
Thank you.
enjoyed it. And thank you, Haley, for always creating all these amazing spaces for your writers. It's really wonderful. So I'm gonna read the two poems that appeared in the summer edition, as well as a third. And I just want to say I'm not advocating for anyone to do anything in this first poem. Okay, it's all a metaphor. So it's titled "Let's Tip Things Over." Like a marriage, the splat of a divorce on concrete. Like those wasted hopes and dreams, all cracked. Like the Sunday night awards banquet, we on the platform, gold medals in hand, then tossed. Like the fancy pantry. Let's shake the shelves, break the glass, let all the crystal crash, a timpani of despair. Let us not answer the phones or pay the bills. Let the work pile in the house in smoking pyres. Forget our parents, our children, our friends, our work, our passions. Ignore the lawn, the animals, the tree branches bashing against the roof. Let's turn up the heat, broiling the skin of happiness. Let's singe and foment and stir, cackling as we do. Let us tear off our garments, wet from repeated drownings. Let us curse and shriek, yell and cavort over the bones of our dead, over the bones of our lives. Feel this, if nothing else, a tabletop edge in your two hands, the playing cards neatly arrayed, tilt, lift, flip with every muscle. Laugh, oh laugh. Feel the wild ride of the smash to earth, the rack and ruin. Burn, we sing, burn it all to cinders, to glass, to air, nothing but joy and breath, capacious, overwhelming, glorious. Again, don't do any of that. It's dangerous. And this one also appeared in the summer edition. It's called Escalatory. To increase, as in a fight, one that starts about toothpaste and ends up being about the crack in the center of true love, about loss, the sadness that another person is never enough to fill the expanse. To expand, to enlarge, to burgeon, mushroom, like a bomb, like a dark cloud looming over the rest of our lives, gaining, lifting, spreading, snowballing. But then what about an escalator? One at a shopping mall, now long gone, but then thriving. What about going up and up and up, the next level, the place where the precise, perfect thing lives in a small box or is displayed in a store window? Feel the swell of hope as we climb, a spreading of our hearts, nothing close to a fight or existential dread. This escalation will not de-escalate, nothing to stop. Think proliferate like joy. Think gain as in a salary raise. Think rise and rise again, hope and hope. Oh, yes, yes, this is all going to work out just fine. And this one is really silly, but I enjoyed writing it. It's called Prosper. Darling, I say to Spock, as in Enterprise, the speed limit is mostly a suggestion. Illogical, he says, hands gripping the wheel at 3 and 9, the new safe position due to airbags. I often travel with Spock. He have few words and little conversation. He very much not interested in my internal life, which is my Garden of Eden, my center of being. Instead of asking about my gnashing of teeth, he points out the orchards full of ripe apples, the clover thriving between the trunks, nitrogen producers, the unruly nature of things leading to better harvests. But what about me? I whisper to my reflection in the window. It's not about you, Spock says as he takes a left onto the interstate. Has it ever been? I ask. But he's listening to a podcast about string theory. The sun beats down on my bare thighs, wrinkled now, me so long with men who would rather note the universe than be in it with me, grappling in the mud wrestle of life. How I want to pull them all by their pointy ears and thrash them to my body. Pay attention to this, I'd scream. Or imagine I'd scream, should I ever do anything to help myself out of this situation, this car, these marriages where silence is the golden rule. Spock relates the composition of cement, asphalt, and concrete. At the gas station, he reads the ingredients in a can of processed chip product. Back on the road, he turns to an audiobook about beluga whales. Now is the time to open the car door and fling myself out, and yes, here I fly, hand, knee, leg, foot, torso, tossed out into the air, pinwheeling, me calling out, me needing to be beamed up, away into any land where someone will listen, a place where I listen, where I learn to listen to myself first. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I think I'm Ellen Austin Lee. I think I'm supposed to just jump right on. Okay, that was a great reading. Thank you, Jessica. And geez, I really loved your reading too, Kate. That was beautiful. Thanks, Haley, for hosting us tonight. I'm at my mother's house in upstate New York in her like 95-degree dining room with kind of dicey Wi-Fi. But so can you guys hear me okay? I'm not like doing that like great, thank you. So I'm going to read three poems, and the first two for sure are going to be from my forthcoming collection, my first full length. It's coming out in May 2025. So by the time it comes out, these poems are going to sound brand new to you. So, but of those two poems, the second one is the one that appears in this summer edition of Sheila-Na-Gig. So the first poem I'm going to read, I'm just going to tell you a couple things about it. It was written really as kind of an elegy about a lot, lost love, a long ago first husband thing that didn't work out. And who knew that it would turn into an actual elegy. He just passed away this past Saturday. So that's a real shock. But so I'm going to read this for him. And the title means freedom in Hebrew. And his name that appears throughout this poem is Dror, which in Hebrew translates to means freedom in Hebrew. And then one other note is you'll hear me say two Hebrew words late in the poem, and it translates to I loved you in the past tense. Means freedom in Hebrew. The sun cooked hot as a kiln, and we baked like clay pots, hard and thirsty. The air smelled of burned iron and tasted of gritty sand. With Dror outside of Cairo, we acted cool as a splash of spring water. We had to. An American with an Israeli husband in Egypt, our embers too hot to touch. When we took the train to Luxor, Egyptian guards escorted him off. Our docile behavior must have drawn their attention. The engine ticked. I flinched when it exhaled bursts of steam. Sweat trickled down the window's dust. Shukran, I trembled when they finally returned, my knees nearly buckling as I embraced him. Drawer shrugged. There's an end to every practical joke, and chuckled, the nervous laugh of the nearly condemned. The train sputtered alive like a choking man recently cut down. Husband as Houdini, able to wriggle out of even this entanglement. Clumpy, he sighed, leaning to kiss my forehead. Nothing will happen to me. We would lose each other in another time, in another place. Sanguine sun, love burns off even after the pyramids of Giza. Ahavti Otach, the monuments of stacked stone murmur your name. The camels rise from their resting place and lumber away. Rest in peace, drawer, Shalita. And this next poem is the one that's in Sheila-Na-Gig's recent issue. It's called Cold Moon. I walk farther across the open field towards the full moon rising, heavy with promise, a pregnant woman. But her image in my lens stays the same distance away, out of reach, not letting me near. Her bright orb teases me into believing she is close. I raise my fingers to touch her cheek, but the mother pulls away. I drop my hand, shake my head, hope no one watched this foolish scene from the hotel windows overlooking the way. I've learned to never show anyone what I need. I drive 10-hour stretches on interstates to chase this place called home, but home shrinks away like a lover grown tired of my neediness. My mother still lives in the red brick house where I was raised, the same curve in the stone path leading to the front door. When my sons were young, I nestled against them so often, I knew their scents, could map the wings of their bones beneath gossamer skin. But as they grew, my warmth shrank like the sun slipping below the horizon. Inevitable, preordained. I've tried to be different, but this chill inhabits me. The winter, my father withered in a hospice bed parked in the living room. I bathed him during his last days, turned him side to side while he slid into unconsciousness, cared for him down to the tiniest drops of water placed between parched lips. But I couldn't forgive myself for how I had to escape every few hours to walk in St. Mary's Cemetery. Afterwards, my mother said, "You're certainly a wonderful daughter." Why hadn't I heard these words before? Would I have been different? Could I have stayed inside, cried? The night my father died, I stared at the moon reflected on silvered snow, cold, dry-eyed. Thank you. And I'm realizing, like, wow, a lot of elegiac poetry coming out of Ellen Austin Lee these days. So because of that, I have like some poems that I just happen to have with me, like printed out. So I just decided to do like that one stride-eyed thing, just pick one out of the pile. So I'm gonna pick out one that is of a different mood. You'll thank me for that, and it's short. So it's called 8 Years Old in the Cornrows, and upstate New York. My mother was born and raised on a dairy farm in Fabius, New York, which is where Robin Wall Kimmerer lives, the one who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass. So that's just an interesting tidbit. But so this takes place in that area. Racing down the alley of August, I slow as I am alone among the rows, hidden in our game of hide and seek on Nana's farm. Timeless summer. The stalks rustle and the breeze kisses my bare arms. Fine hairs lift as my body cools. Silence as the in-between stillness settles. There, a monarch, russet and black-rimmed, lands. I swear I hear its wings flutter. Cicadas crescendo when the sun burns between cloud cover. I hear one of my brothers or sisters' footfalls nearby, then retreating. Hush. The wind rushes around me. I will stay forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen, so much for sharing those beautiful poems, and for Jessica Barksdale jumping off our invited mic. Jessica and Ellen's work is in our summer edition of Sheila-Na-Gig Online. And we also heard from Kate Fox reading from her debut full-length collection, The Company Misery Loves. You can find them and much more at www.sheila-na-gigblog.com. Come check us out. And thank you, everybody, for being here.